Hi, today we're going to learn how to fly the A320. This video applies for all of the A320 family, so this includes the A321, the A319, and all the neo variants. This is because the cabin is pretty much the same. The cockpit, sorry, is pretty much the same on all of these aircraft. The only thing that changes are stuff like the winglets, the engines, and stuff like that, and of course the size of the airplane itself. So today we are in a Sky Airlines plane in Santiago, in Chile, and we're going to be flying to Bariloche in Argentina. Just a quick thing before we start. We're going to be using the checklist on this aircraft, which is the A320 by Flight Factor. The reason why we're going to be using this checklist, well, first of all, obviously, is because it's the one on this plane, but also because I've seen that on a few other aircraft, like the fly-by-wire for Microsoft, or other planes, have very basic checklists that are missing a lot of things. So we're going to be using this one for this video, and when you do your lessons with me, we're actually not going to be using this one. We're going to be using one that's on the internet that I will send you the link of. Also, because it's a bit more complete than other ones, except for the Phoenix one. I think that one's pretty good. So yeah, even though this video is for the Flight Factor, the only thing that really changes is the tablet. Everything else is pretty much the same except for a few details. But the EMCDU is the same, and the cabin itself is the same as well, of course. So we're going to start. So before anything else, of course, we're going to put the chocks and the GPU. There we go. And we're going to start. So PFD light, ND light, ECAM upper display, and lower display all to bright. So this in this airplane is already set by default. In most airplanes it is. If it's not, I'm going to show you where it is. Right here you have panel for the PFD and for the ND. Mind you, the ND has two knobs. So it has the bigger one down there, and it has a smaller one up here. You gotta put both to bright, otherwise it doesn't work. Same for this side, and for the ECAM you have here upper and lower display. Flood and intake lights, those are the internal lights. As it is daytime, it is not needed. Let's keep going. Batteries on and check voltage. So to turn the batteries on, we start with battery 2. We wait for this one to turn, for the light on this one to turn on, and we click it. There we go. And then external power, which is down here. And there we go. I put up the volume a little bit. And there we go. So there's two things that we need to do. Actually, it's a few steps. So first, the way the flow works on this aircraft is you start up and left, and you go down, and then essentially you're going to do left to right, up to down. So the first thing that we're going to start with is the AD IRS. So we do it in the order that it says here. So this is IRS 1, this is IRS 2, and then this is IRS 3. So we set the first one to nav. We wait for it to say align or on bat, depending on the aircraft. On this one is align. Then IRS 2, align. and IRS 3 and align. Then we come all the way down here and we're gonna start extinguishing all the whites in the cabin, in the cockpit, sorry. So we start with crew supply, which is the oxygen supply. Click that on. Then we go to the right and up, and we scan. Of course, we can do the tests, but usually those are done later. So we start here at the fuel pumps, turn all of them on, like that, and we scan down. It's nothing else. Down here we're going to put the nav and logo lights on. So the way this works is 1, you see there's a 1 here, that's nav, and 2 is nav and logo. So we're going to put that one. And then right here we have the cabin signs, so we're going to arm the emergency lights, which are these ones, and we're going to put non-smoking signs on. We don't put the seatbelt signs on until the aircraft has been fueled, so we're going to wait on that for a little bit. Then we come back up here. There's no white, and oh, there's white here. Some airplanes have this off by default, some others don't. This one does, so we're just going to turn those two on, which is the cargo hot air, because it gets very cold up there at 30,000 feet, and the isolation valve. So that's our overhead done for now. So we're going to also, by the way, just a quick explanation of what the IRS is. So you can see here on our instruments that we have our main instruments and we have our map. You can see here it says map not available, and up here PPOS, which is position. So what this means is the aircraft right now doesn't know where we are. It has no information on where it is exactly. And essentially what the IRS does is the alignment system, the instrument and alignment system. And essentially it's going to align the map and our instruments relative to where we as an airplane are. So we're going to do that in a minute, and I'm going to show you how to tell it where we are so it can align itself with the position of the aircraft. But first we're going to keep going with the checklist. So battery on, external power on, IRS set to nav. Electric hydraulic pump, we're going to skip this one because we don't really do that in the real aircraft. Fuel pumps on, engine generators on and default. So this is right here in the electrical panel. This is your electrical panel. To know which panel you're looking at, you can see here to the left side of it, it tells you which panel it is. So this one is the electric panel. This is the air conditioning panel. You have anti-ice, probe heat, cabin pressure, internal lights, signs, and external lights. You have calls, oxygen, GPWS, emergency electrical power, evac, flight controls, ADIRS, and so on. And so here you have also hydraulic, fuel, etc. And the same for here. So we go to the electrical panel and we see generator 1, which is on and says fault. Generator 2, on and says fault. If it was off, it would look like this, so it would be white. So when you extinguish all the white in the cabin, if it's off, it'll appear as white, so you will turn it on and it will say fault because the engines are not producing any electricity because they're off and they're not moving. So we're gonna keep going. Packs 1 and 2 on. Same as before, we go to the air conditioning and they're on with fault again because neither the APU or the engines are on. Engine bleeds 1 and 2, same as before. No white, so that means they're on. Here's engine 1 bleed and engine 2 bleed, as well as the APU bleed, which is actually off at the moment, and we'll turn it on once we turn on the APU. Hot air on, that's what we did on the right side of the overhead panel. Engine anti-ice and probe. So the engine anti-ice is this, which is off, and the probe heat is this, which is also off. Emergency lights armed, they're armed, cabin signs on, nav and logo on, and GPWS on, which is up here. See, it is all on, and the terrain says fault because the IRS is still not aligned. So because it doesn't know where we are, it doesn't know what terrain we have around us, which is not a radar, by the way, it's a database. So that's why it needs to know where we are to be able to be active. So we're gonna keep going now to the pedestal. So parking brakes set. If it's to the right, it's set. If it's towards up, that means it's not set. So parking brake set. Flaps verify 0. Speed brake retracted and disarmed. Engine masters 1 and 2 are off. Engine mode selector normal. It's normal. Thrust levers to idle. They're in idle. Transponder standby. So for the transponder, we need to set both this knob right here and this one. So this is for the transponder itself. This is for the TCAS. So transponder standby. We set it there. And also this, which is the TCAS radar. You can say it says all, above, below. These are the 3 ones that we need to care about. So for takeoff, we're going to set it for above. Once we start our descent, we're going to set it to below. For now, we're going to set it at all. And we can set, we're not on VATSIM right now, but we can set a random squawk code just to give you an idea. ECAM and main panel. So ECAM recall button select. So these are the ECAM buttons. Recall is this one, Romeo Charlie Lima. So we're gonna click it. Oh, that's it. That it would essentially, what that does is it scans the entire airplane, and if it finds a failure or something that's out of the ordinary, it'll tell you here, right below the non-smoking sign. Landing gear, verify down. MCDU and doors, checked. So we're actually gonna open. We're actually gonna call all of services. I don't have SAM for the jetways yet on X-Plane 12. I'm gonna install it, but I don't have it yet, so we're gonna have to use the stairs, which is not very realistic, but we're gonna do it. Then we're gonna call the fuel truck and the cargo loaders, the baggage loaders. There we go. Alright. So now doors show us the cargo and the cabin door. Anti-skid and nose wheel steering. That's right here. So it might be off. If it's off. Well, this is what I was talking about, the scan. So it detects that the anti-skid is off and the nose wheel steering is off. So we're going to turn it on and it disappears. And flight director on. Flight directors are these ones. It'll turn on by itself once. So there's a helicopter. I don't know if you can hear it. So the flight directors are actually going to turn on by themselves once we insert the route and once the IRS is aligned. And I'll explain what the flight directors are once we get to that point. So we're gonna. So that's the cockpit preparations and flows complete. So we're gonna go ahead and go to the next one, which is FMS setup. ATC clearance obtained. So this is if you're on VATSIM or on EVAL. You're gonna do that. Transponder code set. That's it. And MCDU set. We're gonna go ahead and set the MCDU, which is this little screen right here. So the way we're gonna do this is, first of all, we're gonna check our database. We'll check that we have the correct one. If you have Navigraph, this should be the last AREX cycle. If you don't have Navigraph, it's going to be the default one. And yeah, that's alright. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the init page, which is initialization. And as you can see, it says from to. So this is the first step. We're going to tell the aircraft where we are, like at which airport, and where are we going to go. So we are at Santiago in Chile, which is Sierra Charlie Echo Lima / and we're going to Bariloche in Argentina, which is Sierra Alpha Zulu Sierra. We click return and now we have it inserted. Then we're going to click IRS init and we're going to click align on ref. So what that does is you're essentially telling the aircraft to align itself based on the GPS position of the aircraft. So now in a little bit it's going to align this and it's going to align the map based on the position of the GPS, which is what we want. Flight number. In this case, we are Sky Airlines, which is Sierra Kilo Uniform 541, I believe. Let me just check real quick. Yes, 541. Click on flight number and that's it. Then wind. We're going to click on wind request and that's going to give us the winds for different flight levels, which the aircraft needs to kind of compensate for them. You can see a text just appear which says GPS primary. That means the IRS has aligned on the primary GPS, and if we take a look at our instruments, you can see that now they are aligned correctly with the position. You can see this is the airport, so it knows where we are in the world. So that's perfect. So, whoops. So now we can go ahead and clear that message. So we click on the clear button down here, and that's it. Then cost index. So we're gonna go to our flight plan, and we're gonna look at the first page at the top right. There's a number that's going to appear there. That says CI5 or CI and a digit. That's cost index. So in this case, it's 5. So we're going to just click 5 and click on cost index. Then our cruise flight level. So we're going to go to 37,000 feet for today. Although we do have flight steps, which means we'll have to change our altitude during the flight, or cruising altitude. This is very common on international flights, or very long flights. The reason for this is different airspaces have different rules for which cruising altitude to choose. So in Chile, it depends on if you're going north or south. So if you're going south, it needs to be an odd altitude, which is why we'll be flying at 37,000 feet, which is odd. It's an odd altitude. But in Argentina, it's different. So when we get to Argentina, we're gonna have to switch to an even altitude. In this case, SimBrief is telling us that we need to fly to an altitude of 36,000 feet. Sometimes it says 38 for this flight, but on this occasion, we're gonna follow it, and we're gonna go to 36,000 feet once we enter Argentina in our airspace. But here in cruise flight level, we're gonna go and tell it the highest flight level that we're gonna fly. So in this case, it's 37,000 feet. Just remember, this is an Airbus which asks for your cruising altitude in flight level, which means it's a 3-digit number, so you just remove the last 2 zeros. So in this case, it's 370. And there we go. Then, if we click to the left here, you can see there's a weights page. This is very important. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to load all of this into the aircraft. So we're going to go to our flight plan and SimBrief, and on the first page, around the middle of the first page, you can see there's a page that says planned fuel. So what you're looking for in there is the last number that says block fuel, which in this case is 6479er. So we're going to round that up. When it comes to fuel, you always round up down when you're inserting the weights, or when you're calculating your route. This is just to be sure. But to load them, you round up actually. So instead of rounding to 6,000 to 6.4 thousand kilos, we're going to go ahead and round up. So it's going to be 6.5 thousand kilos. So we're going to go ahead and insert that. So 6500. And set. There we go. Then passengers. So for this you have to go to the third page around the middle. It's gonna there's a section that says weights, and the first information that they give us is the amount of passengers, which in this case is 110 passengers. So we're gonna insert that. It's 110. There we go. And finally cargo, which in this case is 2.7. So we're going to insert 2700. And there we go. Now that we have the airplane loaded, we can call off the fuel truck and the cargo loaders. And the passengers, we're going to remove that once we are pushing back or once we're about to push back. So now that we have the weights, we're going to go ahead and talk about this weight page. A lot of people are scared of this page. I was scared at first too, because it seems kind of intimidating. It asks you for a lot of information that you may not know how to enter. So this airplane has something called the weight request. It's very easy. You just click it and that's it. The real aircraft doesn't have this though. And a lot of aircraft like the Phoenix or the fly-by-wire, I'm not sure about the Thales, but I think it doesn't have it either. So we're gonna learn still how to how to load this in. It's very easy. So it's asking us for two things, which is a zero fuel weight and the zero fuel weight center of gravity. In the real aircraft and in most aircraft in game, it also asks you for the block. It's gonna say block right here. Block just means the block fuel, so you have to enter the same amount that we saw for the fuel before, which is 6.5. So you would put 6.5 in the block fuel entry. Then zero fuel gravity, zero fuel weight and zero fuel center of gravity. You can find those in the tablet. So you might find it for the Phoenix. I think you find it in the weights page. In this aircraft, in the flight factor, it's on the perf data page. And so right here you can find it. Zero fuel weight, 52.7. Again, we always round up, but in this case it's below 50. So we just round up to 52.7. So we go here, and we would insert 52.7. Then for the zero fuel weight center of gravity, in this case we find it right here, which is 22.6. So I'm going to do a weight request and you're going to see it's the same numbers that I just called. There we go. See? So 52.7, 22.6 and 6.5 rounded up. So we can keep going with the MCDU. This is a part that takes longest of the flight preparations. So once that we have our weights page completed, we can go and start inserting the flight plan. So we go to the flight plan page, which is right here, and we go to the origin, which is Sierra Charlie Echo Lima, Santiago, and we click on it. Then we click departure, and we're going to select our departure runway, which in this case the route appears on the second page, by the way, of the SimBrief flight plan. So in this case we're going to take runway 17 left, so we're going to click that, and our departure is going to be Linear 5 Charlie. So we're going to look for it. Here it is, Linear 5 Charlie. We're going to click on it. Some departures will ask you for a transition. This one specifically doesn't, but the arrival is going to ask me for a transition, so I will show you how to select a transition when we get to planning the arrival to Bariloche. For now, we click insert, and now you can see we have the departure here. So how do we add the rest of our route, of our flight plan? So we're going to click on linear on the last waypoint, and here we have two options. Either we click on airways, or we simply write our next waypoint and click it on next waypoint. Because we have airways on this flight plan, we're gonna first click on airways. So here And our first airway is going to be upper Mike or uniform Mike 783. So uniform Mike 783. And we press VIA. And we're taking that airway to the waypoint Ancon. So we're going to write that. Ancon, like that. And we're going to press 2. Then we click insert. And we click return. And now we have that entire airway up to Ancon. So for the next waypoint, we're going to again select the last waypoint on our list, which is Ancon. And in this case, we're going to do a direct to Macho. So we're just simply going to write here Macho, and we're going to select next waypoint, like this. Here, it's asking us which one of these 2 points do we want to go to. And it's giving us here the coordinates, so we can actually look it up and see which one is it. So if you go to your SimBreeze flight plan, there's 2 ways of doing this. Either in the PDF, if you go below the third page, you can see there's a list of all your waypoints with their coordinates and some other information, including the temperature, the fuel on board at that waypoint, and other interesting stuff, including your speed as well. But what we're interested in is the coordinates for now. So we look for Macho, and it says the coordinates are south 3817.3, west 07020.7. We look at our list, and that is the first one right here. So we select that one. Then we select insert, and now you can see it. Now it shows Mocho after Ancon. And another interesting thing, because we did a direct, you can see that the airway does no white text above the waypoint, which is usually the airway or the departure or arrival. So in this case, because it's a direct, that doesn't appear. So we're gonna keep going, and our next waypoint, let me see. Alright, so we're gonna click again on the last waypoint, and the next waypoint does use an airway, so we're gonna click on airway, and it's gonna be uniform whiskey 44. So uniform whiskey 44 to Chato. And we click 2. Then we click again insert, then return, and now we have up until Chato. So after this comes the arrival. So we're going to click on the destination, which is Bariloche, and we click arrival. Then we select the approach that we want to do for which runway. So it's going to be runway 29er, but we can see that there's more than one ILS for runway 29er. There's 3 actually. There's Zulu, Yankee, and X-ray. So how do we know which one to select? So we're gonna go to the charts. We're gonna select. We're gonna go to the approach charts, and we're gonna go to runway 29, and you'll see that right here you have the 3 ILSs. So we're gonna look to the first one, which is ILS Zulu runway 29er. So you can see that there's 3 waypoints for the arrival. So that's Dogla, Irlam, and Pukib. We're going to take a look at the other one at ILS Yankee, and we can see that this is a conventional arrival. So this essentially you would arrive to the VOR, which is the kind of circle above the runway, sorry, above the airport, and then you would do this kind of weird approach, doing almost a 180, a little bit more than a 180, to align yourself with the runway. That's called a conventional approach. Every airport has one. That's what you would use if you were, for example, in a Cessna or in some airplane that doesn't necessarily have an RNAV equipment. So this is a VOR approach, a conventional approach, so we're not going to do that one. And then let's look at the ILS X-ray. So you can see this one is actually also conventional approach. It's kind of a mixture of the two, but it's a conventional approach because it uses the VOR. It's only, instead of doing that kind of weird turn, here you're gonna do 2 turns. So you arrive at the VOR, you go straight, then you turn to the left again, and you are aligned with the runway. So these are 2 conventional approaches, the Yankee and X-ray. So we're not going to select those ones. We're going to go for the Zulu one, which is the RNAV, which only uses waypoints. So now we know that we need the ILS Zulu. So we're going to select Zulu here. And then it's asking us for our star, or the arrival. So we're going to go look at our flight plan, and it's Chateau 1 Quebec. So we're going to look for it, Chateau 1 Quebec, which is this one right here. And then it's asking us for the transition. So we're going to look at which one is the best. So if we look at our approach, or star charts, we can find Chateau, and we can see that it leaves us onto Dogla. So, and if we look then at the approach chart of the ILS Zulu, we can see that one of those transitions is Dogla, which is where the star is going to leave us. So we know that that's our waypoints, our transition waypoint. So we're going to go ahead and select Dogla. After that, we click Insert, and now we have the entire flight plan here. So we're going to go check quickly that there's no discontinuities. We'll learn how to take care of discontinuities during our class, but for now we're just going to leave it as it is, because usually if you have your Navigraph subscription and you have your nav data updated to the latest ERAC, you shouldn't find really any discontinuities. So for now we're not going to care about them, but we will learn how to take care of them in the in our sessions. So that is the flight plan completed. So now we're going to go ahead and do the performance. So we're going to click the performance page, which is right next to the initialization. And we find this right here. Some airplanes, like the Phoenix, actually have a way to calculate the performance on your tablet, but the Flight Factor doesn't have that, so we're going to have to use an external page, which I'm going to do real quick. So it's going to ask you information like your gross weight, your center of gravity, your configuration, the airport, and the weather conditions. So gross weight, again, you can find this in your tablet. In this case, it's in perf data. So it's right here, gross weight. It's 59244. So 59244. Then your center of gravity, which is 22.8. 22.8. The configuration is always gonna be 1 plus flaps. We always take off with that configuration on the Airbus, except for very very short runways, but in general it's 1 plus flaps always. Anti-ice is not needed, and air conditioning, we're actually gonna take off with air conditioning off for this takeoff. Usually we take off with air conditioning off for the Airbus. Airport ICAO. So in this case it's Santiago de Chile, and we're going to select the runway, which is 17 left. Then runway length. Oh, actually it selected the runway length, heading and conditions itself, because I selected the runway, which is nice. Some airports do that, some others don't. It depends on the aircraft, and if your aircraft doesn't have a performance calculator integrated, then it depends on the airport for this page, which I will share with you once we have our lessons. Then we need the weather data, so we're gonna go look for the METAR. Again, this I will show you with you. This I will share with you once we start our lessons. But essentially, we're gonna look for the METAR, which in this case is here. All right, so it's the QNH is 1014. 1014. If you're in Mexico, Canada, or the United States, you're going to be using inches of mercury, which is going to look, for example, something like 29908, for example. But in this case, we're in South America, which uses hectopascals as well as Europe, and most of the world actually uses hectopascals. So it's 1014. The temperature is 15 degrees Celsius, and the wind is 180 at 7. So 180 at 7, and we click calculate. So now we can see that there is now the performance. I'm going to be showing screenshots of all of this on the screen, so you can see what I'm talking about. So we're going to start inserting this information into the airplane. The only thing that you have to kind of ignore if you're using this page is the transition altitude and the thrust reduction and engine out altitudes. The rest is correct. So we're gonna go ahead and set this into our airplane. So first, so V1 is 145. V rotate is 145 as well, and then V2 is 149. There we go. Then flaps, it's gonna be 1/up 1.2. So 1/up 1.2. We can just make sure that this information is correct right here. So trim position, it says up 1.2, so you can see it's correct. So we insert it in the flaps So yeah, we click the flaps button, and then the flex, which is going to be 65 for this flight. So the flex essentially is instead of going full power, the airplane is essentially going to go to a specific power that we're telling it here. I think I'm not exactly sure about this, but I'm 90% sure it's it's essentially the degrees at which the wings flex. So I think that's what this is about, but I'm not exactly sure. Still, we have the information, so it doesn't really matter. So now that we have this page complete, we have completed the MCDU. So we're now going to keep going with the checklist. Also, now that we have the QNH, we're going to set it here. So it's 1014. If you're in inches of mercury and you want to change to hectopascals, you have to click this little black thing that's at the base of this knob, like this, and there you go. Right, so checklist. QNH mode, hectopascals verified. QNH set. ND, which is this, mode and range, so it's in arc, and I'm gonna give it a little bit more of range, so to about 40. VOR / ADF select, so this are these two switches right here. They don't really matter, but you can select it if you want. I like to put them to VOR because it's what we really use. We very rarely use the ADF. It's pretty much dying, the ADF in aviation, even though it can be very helpful, but yeah, it's not really used. Speed managed, heading managed, and initial altitude set. So what do they mean by managed? If you see here on this is the autopilot panel. You can see that below the speed, heading, and altitude, there's a little circle or a dot. That means it's in managed mode. Managed mode means it's gonna automatically follow the flight plan. So if I didn't want it to be in managed, I could I could essentially pull the knob. So to pull it is with the arrow facing down. To push it, it's with the arrow facing up. So if I pull it, I can now select manually the speed at which I want to go. For example, say I want to go to 220 knots. I set it there, and the airplane is going to follow that. But if I press it, it's going to be in managed mode, and it's going to automatically follow the speeds in the flight plan. Same for the heading, so if I put it in manual mode, I can myself select which heading to fly. This is helpful, for example, if the ATC is vectoring you, or if it's telling you, for example, Sky 541, or let's say Delta 485, fly heading 220. Then you would go here and set the heading to 220, and the aircraft is going to follow that. And if, for example, they say continue own navigation or continue as filed, then you would click it again towards the inside to put it in managed mode. Right here, the only thing is we need to actually set it in a interception. Right, so for that we are going to need to set it in in a how do you say this? In an intersection heading, which is going to be the runway heading, so it's not too bad. It's just 176, I believe. So it doesn't really matter. Once in the air, it's gonna kind of go back to managed mode. The altitude, same thing. So it's gonna follow the altitudes in your flight plan up until the altitude that you select. So in this case, we're gonna go directly to 37,000 feet. By the way, to change this from hundreds to thousands, it's the same as with the QNH. So this black kind of belt around here. So you click it, and now you've selected 1,000, and here it's hundreds. So we're gonna go to 37,000 feet. So that's perfect. All right. So IRS confirm aligned. It's aligned. Flight director cycle off, then on. That. LS, which is the landing system, is off in both sides. And FCU, verify complete and correct. And it is. So we can go now to the next one. So before start, fueling, verify disconnected, balance and sufficient. That's checked. Chocks removed and traffic cones removed. So we're going to go ahead and remove the chocks. Then overhead panel, APU start, and APU bleed on. So we're going to go ahead and start the APU. So the way to do this is we click first on the master switch, like so. And then we come down here and look at the ECAM. It's going to switch to the APU page. And it's going to appear, a text is going to appear saying flap open in green. So we're going to wait for that. There it is. Once it says flap open, we can click the start button for the APU, like that. And now the APU is going to start. You can see it there. The EGT, which is the exhaust gas temperature, is rising, as well as the N. So once it is fully on, this is gonna go to green, saying available. There we go. Once it is in available, we can turn on the APU bleed and the probe heat and window heat, like so. External power off. So we have the APU now, we don't need the external power. So we turn that off. And we're actually going to go here and remove the ground power unit because we don't need it anymore. Then doors closed and beacon on. So we're going to go ahead and remove the stairs and close that door. There we go. And now we check the door page and we see that everything is now closed. And finally, beacon light on, which is over here on the external light panel. Beacon on. So now that we have the beacon on, we're gonna request a pushback. And we're gonna plan it here. This highly depends on the airport and the active runways and whatnot. But we're gonna do it there. Alright. And we're gonna call the pushback. So the TOW is now driving up. And we're gonna wait for it. Now that the fuel is done and we have closed the doors also, we can put the seatbelt sign. It's important not to forget about that. And because we're gonna start the engines and the APU, we can do the engine test whilst the tug is being connected. So engine 1, it's good. APU, it's good. And engine 2. That is great. So all our fires works. Ready to connect. Says a before start checklist complete. So we're gonna switch to the pushback and engine start, and we're gonna wait for the pushback. So push and start clearance obtained, ground communication initiated, and the following commands: right side verify clear. So we're essentially gonna verify that there is no people to the right of the wing. Alright. And we're gonna wait for the push, for the tug to be connected.
Tug connected and bypass being inserted. Release parking brake.
Perfect. So we're gonna release the parking brake.
Starting pushback, and you may start engine.
It says we can start the engine. So engine mode selector, ignition start. There it is. We wait a second, so until these two show us the actual information on the engines. And then engine master 2 on. And we monitor that the engine starts correctly. What do we need to see? The N2. That's the first thing that starts to spool up. And the oil pressure, the oil PSI. If you don't have oil pressure within 30 seconds, you need to turn off the engines, because that means there's a problem with the engines and they're gonna explode if you keep going. So yeah. So we have oil pressure, that's nice. N1 is starting to spool up as well. And we can hear it. Now it says available. So that means the engine is stable and correctly turned on. So now we go to engine number 1. So engine master 1 to on. And we do the same thing. So the engine is going to start to spool up. Don't worry, by the way, about this. This is a nose wheel steering disconnected. That's because there's a bypass pin inserted for the pushback tug to be able to move around the steering wheel, the nose wheel, sorry, without causing problems. We have oil pressure on engine number 1, and
Operation complete. Set parking brake.
there we go. So we're gonna set park and brake, and both engines are available now. So we do the after start checklist. So overhead panel, engine and wing NTIs as required. In this case they are not required. APU bleed and APU master off. So to turn off the APU, you just turn the APU master switch. You don't need to click the start button. Pitch trim set. So how do we set it? We go to the ECAM buttons and we search for the flight control button, and we're gonna set it to what our performance says. So it's 1.2 in this case, up 1.2. And we click it again to make sure that the ECAM show us the page that we need to see for that moment. Engine mode selector as required, so we're gonna set it to normal. Spoilers armed. flaps set. So again, flaps 1, like so. And rudder trim is 0. So it's right here, and we're going to click reset. Perfect. We're going to wait for the hand signal. I think he already gave it to us. He's just going away now. Yeah, he already gave it to us. So we can start the taxi. We're going to finish this real quick though. So flight controls checked. So we go to flight controls. We go full left. Wait, sorry, because I need to detect that I have all these things. Perfect. Alright, so now full left, full right, full up, full down, rudder right, rudder left, and brakes. We can see here brake pressure. Perfect, so that's done. ECAM door page. We go to the door page, check everything is closed. It is. And ECAM status, which is this button right here. And it's normal. Everything is normal on the airplane, so that's great. So now, after start checklist complete and taxi checklist. So taxi clearance obtained, parking brake released, and auto brake max, takeoff config, and taxi light on. So we're gonna go ahead and turn on the taxi light, and we're gonna check where exactly are we gonna taxi. So we go to the airport charts, and we're gonna taxi via Kilo, Charlie, and Alpha. Kilo, Charlie, and Alpha. So parking brake released, and let's start our taxi. So we're gonna go ahead and set the auto brake to max, and takeoff config. We only need the we only need to check the cabin. So to do that in this airplane, you do it in the FAP page. By the way, also we're gonna give him some light as well. But as you can see, there's a button here that says cabin ready, so we're gonna click that. In the Phoenix, you don't have to do that step, and in the fly-by-wire, you just have to click these buttons right here in the calls, the forward and aft, like that.
Yes, sir.
So we're gonna continue our taxi via Kilo. This is Kilo. Now that we have the cabin ready, we're gonna test the takeoff config, which is this button right here. And we have no blue, which means everything is normal. So now while we're taxiing, we're actually going to turn off the packs. So in your air conditioning panel, you're going to turn off packs 1 and 2, and we're going to turn them on again once we are in the air, shortly after takeoff. We're just going to keep going. So this is Charlie, so we're going to turn here on Charlie. So again, the limit while you taxi is 30 knots. So we're going at a pretty good speed right now. taxiing this a bit fast. That's because the taxis, well, there's not really much happening. um, so yeah. So we're also going to turn on the runway turn-off lights and wing lights as well. Alright, now we're in front of the runway, so we're gonna do the before takeoff checklist. So parking brake set. TCAS, T-A-R-A, and tilt above. So this is what I talked to you about before. So we're gonna tilt it above, and we're gonna set this to on and T-A-R-A. It's very important that you set this one to on as well, because this is the actual code. This is just the TCAS. Engine mode selector as required, so normal. Brake temperature check below 150 degrees, which it is. That's good. Brake fans off, sliding tables stowed. ATC takeoff clearance obtained. In this case, we don't need that. We don't have ATC. And external lights on. So this is every light in here. So first nose, we put the takeoff. Strobe lights on. And of course landing lights on. Alright. So with all of this being done, we can now take off.
Approaching 17 left. On runway 17 left.
Alright, so the way this is going to work, how do we take out this airplane? So first of all, we're going to put the thrust to about 40, between 40 and 50%, right? So around here. We're going to check that both engines spool up correctly to that, and that they are stable at that point. After which, we're going to go ahead and send them to flex, which is this right here. We're not going to use toga. So this, when you're calculating your how do you call this, your performance, it's going to say if you need to do a toga or flex. If you put here flex, then you know you have to put it to flex when you take off. If it doesn't, if there's no flex, that means you need to go to toga.
Left. On runway 17 left.
There we go. Alright, so we're gonna put them to flex, and I'm gonna call out once the airspeed starts moving. I'm gonna call out airspeed alive, then 80 knots. Then at 100 knots, I'm gonna do a cross check, meaning I'm gonna check the airspeed on this side. And then V1 rotate. And once we're in the air, once we pass this this little this point on the vertical speed indicator. I'm going to call out positive climb and then gear up. So let's go ahead and do just that. So 40%. Stable. Flex. Takeoff thrust set. Airspeed alive. $80 knots. Cross check. Ooh, a little bit laggy there. V1, rotate. And here we are. Positive climb. Gear up. So now that we're here, I'm gonna select AP1 on the autopilot panel. AP1. I'm gonna turn on the packs. And we're gonna do after takeoff checklist. So spoilers, disarmed, engine mode selector normal, taxi light off. So taxi light is runway turn off and the nose light. So now it says right here, lever climb. What does this mean? It means it wants us to move this from flex down to climb, like that. And now that we've done that, the autopilot is now active. We're above the S right here, which means we can put the flaps to 0. So we're gonna do that. And that's after takeoff checklist complete. Alright, the recording got paused there for a second. Sorry about that, but nothing really happens up until we crossed. Alright, sorry about that. Now that we're above 10,000 feet, we're going to go ahead and turn off the exterior lights. Alright, sorry about that. I had a little bit of a technical issue, but we're now just passing 10,000 feet, so we turn off all the exterior lights. So that's wing lights, nav and logo to 1, nose light, landing lights, and runway turn off lights. The beacon and strobe lights stay on, as well as the nav lights. Also, you can see down here that the QNH is now kind of beeping at us, which means we are passing the transition altitude and we need to switch to standard on the QNH. So how do we do that? Also, I'm going to put the caster button. I forgot about that. Very important. I'll show you why in a second. So to put the QNH in standard mode, you need to pull it. So, whoops. You can see that it says pull standard. So remember, for pulling the knobs, it's arrow down, and you click like so. Now I'm going to show you real quick what the caster is. So you can see this point, it just shows us the waypoint. But if we click on caster, it shows us also the regulations that we need to meet, right? So in this case it's telling us we need to be above flight level 110 by that point, which we are. So that's good. That's how you know that the aircraft is respecting the regulations and such. And we can also put the terrain on ND button because well, Chile is quite mountainous. I don't know if that's how you say it, but it has a lot of mountains, so we can click that as well. So 10,000 feet, external lights on, seatbelt sign as required. We're also going to turn off the seatbelt sign. and pressurization checked. So we go to the lower ECAM, and you can see that this is basically all the information we need. Basic information about the engines, including fuel used, oil quantity, and N1 and N2. Landing altitude, which is automatic on the Airbus. Then the delta P, which is the difference in pressure between the inside and the outside. And here we have the cabin altitude, which is the virtual altitude, if you want to look at it that way, inside of the cabin, because of the pressure inside of the cabin, right? So we're at we're at an air density that would be the same as being at 4,750 feet. We have the temperature on the cabin as well, and the outside temperature. The outside temperature, this is very important. So you have the TAT, which I'm not exactly sure, but I'm again 90% sure that that's the temperature received by the probes. For example, this, or the pitot tubes and all of that. Because we have the probe heat turned on all the time, then we don't need to worry about that. Then the SAT, which is the surface air temperature, that we need to worry about. That's the temperature around the wings and on the surfaces of the airplane. So how do we know when to use the anti-ice? Well, it's very simple. If the temperature is below 10 degrees Celsius on the SAT, then that means, and of course, there's a humidity in the air. So, for example, right now, you can see it's raining. There's rain, and the temperature is below 10 degrees. It's minus 27 degrees, and those are icing conditions. All right, that means that ice could form on the wings and on the engines. So what we're going to do is we are actually going to turn it on, because we have icing conditions at the moment. So we're going to continue our climb up until the cruising altitude. I want to show you a few symbols on the radar right now. So you can see we have, also I'm going to turn off this, we don't need it anymore. You can see we have here this blue arrow that goes up and then levels off. That means that's our top of climb. That's the point where we're going to reach our cruising altitude. And then right here we have our top of descent, which is a white arrow that starts level off and then starts kind of going down. Right, that's the top of descent. That's where we're going to start our descent. So we're going to continue our climb. There's not much to do right now other than just wait for it. Oops, sorry. Other than just to wait for the aircraft to reach its cruising altitude. So once we reach our cruising altitude, we're actually going to stay very little time at that altitude, because right after Ancon, right around here, that's where the Argentinian airspace begins. So we're going to have to go to 36,000 feet very, very shortly after our cruising altitude. So, just a quick thing. We can see that there's a bit of turbulence in the wind shear. You can tell by the drops in the airspeed, the sudden drops and gains in the airspeed. And here, so we're actually gonna put the seatbelt sign on until we get to a calmer air. So right here we're gonna enter again into the cloud, which is gonna cause turbulence again. Alright, we have reached now our cruising altitude, or we're reaching it. You can see we're above the clouds now, so we can turn off the anti-ice. No need for it now. And now we're just gonna cruise and monitor the aircraft. So again, let's check the cabin altitude. So it's leveled off at 7,500 feet, which is perfect. And yeah, the temperature is also pretty good. Alright, so we're now just gonna wait. We're just gonna wait. When taking advantage of the fact that we're already in cruising, and we have to wait either way to do the flight step, I'm going to show you what the flight director is. So you see here in your main instrument panel that you have kind of a crosshair, a screen that does there's two. I'm forgetting the name. There's a green crosshair, right? So when the vertical line goes to the right, or to the right or to the left, you essentially want to put this. You essentially want to follow it, right? Same for the vertical, for the horizontal line right here. So essentially, what you want to do is you want to put this square, this yellow square, right in the middle of the crosshair of the two lines, right? And that's essentially gonna make you follow the perfect flight path for the flight plan that you've put. So when pilots fly manually, which does happen, essentially what they do is that they simply follow this this crosshair right here. When we do a turn at Macho, I'll show you how that happens. So now we're also at cruising altitude. There's no more turbulence. We can turn this off. And right, so we're going to check exactly where do we need to switch to 36,000 feet. Right, so I'd say it's about now, actually. So we're gonna go ahead and switch. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. So we put it in managed. Again, you can put it in manual as well, because it's a flight step, but I like to do it in managed. So we're going to start to do that. And there we go, we're leveling off now at 36,000 feet. Perfect. So we're about in the clouds at the moment. Pretty impressive, actually. Alright, so now we can just wait until we're about 40 miles from the top of descent. So I'm gonna continue the flight, and I'll see you there when we're about to do the descent. Alright, so now we are at around 40 miles before the top of descent, a little bit less. So we're going to start doing our preparations for the descent. So, pre-descent, ATIS obtained. So again, there's no ATC online, we're not on VATSIM, so we're just going to search for the METAR. Right, we got it. MCDU, flight plan, performance, nav and radio set. So let's do that. You can say it says enter destination data. So we're going to go to the perf page. We're going to go next phase until we go to the approach phase. And we're gonna have to fill out all this information. So we're going to start with the QNH. Which is going to be 1009. So 1009er. And there we go. Temperature is 02 degrees. It's very cold out there. Magnitude and wind. It's going to be 310 at 18 knots. So 310 at 18 knots. Again, transition altitude, the airplane takes it automatically, we don't have to insert anything. And the minimums, so those are in the approach charts. So we're going to go for the approach charts for Bariloche, here they are. So it's ILS Zulu. Whoa. Yeah, we're heading a lot of turbulence, so we're actually gonna turn on the seatbelt sign. That was a bit of wind shear there. Let's see how the approach is. Right, so minimums are at the bottom of the approach chart for the ILS. So in this case, in black, I'm gonna put a screenshot on the screen. You'll see there's two. One that's in big and in black, so it's 2980. That's the barometer minimums, right? And in the parentheses, the 219, that's the radio altimeter minimums, right? So we're gonna use the radio altimeter simply because it doesn't depend on our QNH setting. So we're going to go 219er. So 219er. And we put it in DH, I believe. Yes, DH. So DH is radio, MDA is barrel altimeter. So once we have this, we can simply wait for the top of descent to get here, and once we are over it, once we are over the top of descent, we're gonna click this inside. But before we do that, we need to set the altitude at which we want to go, of course. So let's see. All right. So the altitude to intercept the ILS at Bariloche is 6,200. So 6,200. There we go. And once we are once we're just above the top of descent, we're gonna push it inside, so arrow up, and we're gonna start our descent. Nav accuracy checked. Auto brake, let's set it. So it's gonna be auto brake. It could be auto brake low. It's moderately sized runway. For very short runways, you can put medium, or if it's a busy airport and you want to get out of the runway as fast as you can, then you click medium. But this is Bariloche. We're pretty much the only traffic that's gonna get into Bariloche, so it's gonna be low. Seatbelt sign is on, and anti-ice for the moment is not required. On the descent, it's probably going to be required. So right about now, this is below 5 miles. We can click inside, and we can push it inside, and we're going to start our descent. There we go. And as you can see on the vertical speed indicator, we are starting now our descent. And you can also say up here in the autopilot modes, it says descent or des. That means we're starting our descent correctly. So now we really just have to wait until we get there. On the way down, I just want to show you something. So there's I'm going to be showing you now what the matter is for Bariloche at the moment, and I'm going to explain to you a few of these things. So first off, we have the airport, we have the time and day, then we have the winds, wind direction, and then wind speed. Then 5,000, that's 5,000 meters of visibility. And then we have minus SHSN. I do not know what that is, and that's normal. There's a ton of codes, different codes, so I'm going to go ahead and search what that is. Alright, so SN means showers or precipitation, and SN means snow. So there's a minus in front, which means there's very low showers and snow, but it is snowing right now at Bariloche, so we are going to have to use anti-ice, and that's interesting because the runway conditions are going to be wet actually. Even though here on the simulator they might not be, because the simulator takes the northern hemisphere when it comes to the seasons. So right now it doesn't detect it as being winter on the south south hemisphere, which we are in right now. It detects it as being summer, the end of summer. Which is true on the northern hemisphere in Mexico or the United States or maybe even Europe. Still, it's quite interesting conditions, so we are going to have to use anti-ice on our approach, which is it's very interesting. And this is actually the first time that I've gone to an airport with active snowing in process, so that's gonna be interesting. So because the runway conditions are wet, that just kind of we could use we could use medium auto brake, because it's gonna be harder to stop. Still though, I'm gonna use low because again on the simulator it's probably not gonna be wet, and still we have anti-skid, so you don't have to worry about braking too hard. The airplane is not going to let you drift or skid, so that's quite nice. So we're passing 280, flight level 280 right now. And we'll see how it is when we get a bit lower and we have a visual on the surroundings. It's 5 kilometers of visibility, which is not ideal. It's not too much visibility, but we're doing an ILS, so we don't really care. If we're planning for a visual approach, then yeah, that would be a problem. We will have to switch to either a VOR or an ILS approach. So on the descent, you just have to monitor the cabin altitude and pretty much what the aircraft is doing. Also, you can see that we have pretty big winds. This is the wind. So we have winds at 276 with a speed of around 95 knots. That is really fast. That's almost 200 kilometers per hour. So yeah, those are pretty fast winds. But because we did the wind request at the beginning, the aircraft knows exactly how much to compensate for it, apart from the flight director, of course, which is also compensating for all that wind. Alright, so now we're starting to get a bit low, and you can see we're now in between the clouds. So clouds means there's humidity, and if we check temperature, we're minus 22 degrees. So that is icing conditions. So we're going to go ahead and turn on the anti-ice. We're just going to keep descending steadily, just checking the fuel and the cabin altitude, as well as the cabin temperature. Until we get to around 10,000 feet, or the transition altitude. So in America, the transition altitude comes before. It's going to be around 19,000 feet, more or less. Here in Argentina, apparently it's 8,000 feet, I believe. Let me just check. Yeah, 8,000 feet. So yeah, we're just gonna wait for 10,000 feet before we can do anything else. All right, so we're at 11,000 feet, about to pass 10,000 feet, so we can start to do the approach checklist. So sliding table stowed. External lights on. So this is all the external lights, including the nose lights. Seatbelt sign verify on. It's on. LS, which is landing system. We're going to turn it on. So it's right here. It's right next to the flight director button. And this, I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see what it adds to the main instrument panel. There we go. So it's this. This is for the ILS. So essentially two diamonds are going to appear. And what we want to do is essentially put them both just above the yellow line right there. We'll see that as we get closer and the airplane starts actually intercepting the ILS signal. Then pressurization check. So again, we check the pressurization. And ECAM status check. So we press again the button, the ECAM status button, and it's all normal. So that's great. At 8,000 feet, we're going to change the QNH setting from standard to the local QNH, which is 1009er, I believe. Also, it's a pretty mountainous area, so I turn on the terrain on indeed. Usually the terrain radar is not on the captain's side, it's on the first officer sides, but well, we don't have a first officer, so we're going to put it on the captain's side. Also, as for the ILS frequency, in most aircraft, including the Boeing 737, you need to actually set the frequency and the course. But on this airplane, we don't have to do that. It does it automatically. So it's ILS Bariloche 109.5 and the course is 288. So it does that automatically. We don't have to change anything here. So that's also pretty cool on this aircraft. It's one of the things that it does automatically. So now we're in the little bit of precipitation there. It's one of those showers that the Mattor was warning us about. I don't know. I don't think this game has snow actually modeled, so I don't think we'll be able to see that. But so yeah. Also, we're below 10,000 feet, so we also checked that the airspeed is not above 250 knots, which it isn't. So that's pretty good. So that's approach checklist complete. Next one is the landing checklist, which we'll do once we are actually aligned with the runway and on the ILS, on the localizer. So that's our transition. That's where the star ends and the approach begins at Douglas. That's what we programmed into the plane before. We're about to pass our transition altitude. You can see the visibility is quite low. Right. So we're about to pass our transition altitude, and you'll see the little bit of lag as the simulator loads the terrain. So you'll see now the standard is now beeping, it's now blinking. That means we have passed our transition altitude and we need to set the local altimeter. So to do that, you're going to push the knob towards the inside, like such, and we're going to put 1009er, which is the QNH, and same for the other side. There we go. Perfect. So now the airspeed is going to be reduced to 200. We can help it reduce it with the spoilers, with the speed brakes, and that's going to help the airplane go to a lower speed. So below 230 knots, as we can see here, this is the maximum speed for the flaps, and this is for the landing gear. So below 230 knots, we can put flaps 1, which we're actually going to do. So flaps 1. Once we start, once we go below 200 knots, we can put flaps 2, and below 180 we can put flaps 3. So this is actually a little bit too fast for my liking, so I'm actually gonna manually control the speed now, and I'm gonna put it to 160 knots. Like that. We're going to put speed brakes to help it slow down, and in a little bit we'll put flaps 2.
2,500.
That's the radio altimeter warning us that we are 2,000 feet above the terrain, about this mountain. And you can now see the diamonds here. So we're going to put flaps 2. You can now see the diamonds, so our goal is to put this diamond here and this diamond here. So that beeping is the gear horn, so we're actually going to put the gear down now. And now that we have this diamond between these two circles right here and this one as well, we can now arm the approach button, which is right here below the vertical speed knob. So right there, and you can see now these two appear. So lock, which just turned green, that means now we're not following the flight plan, we're following the ILS localizer. And we have the glide slope, which is kind of the same except vertical. So now, oh right, the speed brake, I forgot to retract it, so I'm going to retract it now. And we're going to clear this message and clear the status page, like so. The approach phase has now been activated, which means we can set this to manage, and it's going to set us the approach speed. We're below 160 knots, so we're actually going to put flaps 3 to help us gain a little bit more lift. And landing checklist. Taxi light set to takeoff. It's set to takeoff. Missed approach altitude. It's going to be 100. So around there. Spoilers armed. They're armed. Landing memo no blue. The conditions are not very favorable, so I'm actually going to put the engine mode to ignition. And flaps full. So if you look out the window now, we can see the flaps are completely extended now. So as you can see, we're now the airplane is now following these two diamonds, which is the ILS, to make sure that we go to the runway. So the runway is just past this little hill right here, and yeah, well, the visibility is not great. So when we land, if we cannot see the runway once we get to our minimums, once the aircraft calls minimums, then we'll have to go around. If we see it, we just say continue, and we continue our landing. To make an auto land, you can click the autopilot 2 as well. So having all 3 autopilots active at once, that will initiate the auto land sequence. But for now, we're gonna land manually. I'm going to put the wipers on. And wow, we have very, very low visibility. If we cannot land like this, then we'll just go around, come back again, and we'll do an auto land. But for now, we'll just keep going and try to land this manually if we can. So as soon as I see the runway, I'm gonna deactivate the autopilot by clicking twice on this red button right here. And yeah, so that's landing checklist complete. Landing memo no blue. So landing checklist complete. So this is after landing. Oh yeah, we have very, very bad visibility. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to land this manually. I do not see the runway. Okay, I can kind of start seeing it right there. Okay, I'm gonna deactivate the autopilot now. And we're gonna make sure we follow
500.
these two.
400.
Okay, I can see the runway now.
100 above.
I'll do
300.
small movements.
Caution, taxiway. Caution,
200.
taxiway.
It's not a taxiway.
100.
100.
50. 40. 30. 20. Retard.
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 Thrust to idle.
5.
Caution, on taxiway. On
Push
taxiway.
down that. Full reverse. Right. Thrust idle. You can turn the wiper off. And now let's taxi off the runway. So we're gonna put flaps up and spoilers disarmed. There we go. Whoa. Okay, we missed the taxiway. No problem though. We can just go ahead and do a turn. So engine mode selector to normal. We're going to do a turn right here. Alright, flaps retract, transponder, we'll put it in standby once we get out of the runway. Brake temperature below 300 degrees, which it is. External lights off, so we're going to turn wing lights, we're going to turn landing lights off. And we'll put nose wheel lights to taxi. Alright, now that we're out of the runway, we can turn off strobe lights as well, and runway turn off lights. We'll also turn off the wing and engine anti-ice, and we're gonna turn on the APU. And also the transponder we can set to standby here and standby there. We can also turn off the terrain radar. We don't need that anymore. Alright, so We're gonna go ahead and park at that gate right there, which is gate 7, I believe. You can see flap open, so we can now turn that on. And we can start taxiing towards that gate. So this right here is gate 8. So we're gonna go ahead, take a look outside, and kind of be our own marshal. So the engines look like this because of the cold air. That's normal. So right, parking brake set, and Chuck said this airport in real life doesn't have a GPU, so we're not gonna use a GPU for this. We're only gonna depend on the APU, which is now on, by the way. So let's turn the APU bleed on. So, after landing checklist complete, parking checklist, parking brake set, engine masters 1 and 2 are off. Now, they change the source of the electricity, and they slowly turn off. Seatbelt sign off. Beacon light off, and let's toggle the jetway attachment. External power on. In this case, again, we don't have external power, so we're not going to turn it on. Fuel pumps off, and APU as required. We're not going to turn off the fuel pumps because the APU requires the fuel pumps. What we can turn off is the crew supply and the cargo heat, so the hot air and the isolation valve. We can also now call the gate to be open, and the cargo on this side as well. There we go. Now that the engines are off, you can see that the hydraulics have been turned off as well. And now we would open the door. In the X-Plane version of the Flight Factor, you cannot open the door yet. But yeah, at this point you would open the door again. Right. So now let's just imagine that our passengers have been unloaded completely. So now we go back to, actually I'm going to remove the cargo, and we'll go to the checklist and securing. So you would turn the displays off. In reality you wouldn't. You would just turn the IRS off like this. External power off. Again, we don't have external power. Cabin signs and emergency lights off. Nav lights now can go off as well. Probe heat off. And APU off. Sorry, APU bleed off. And the APU off. Sometimes it takes a little while to turn off. We're going to turn off the fuel pumps as well. There we go. So now it says fuel low pressure. And battery 1 and 2 off. We'll turn them off after the APU turns off, which is not turning off. It's taking a bit too much. It sometimes can take a while. Sometimes you may even need to kind of play around with the master switch. I think. Oh, there we go. Perfect. I think the Phoenix has a bug with the APU shutdown, but doesn't matter. Point is, now that the APU is off, we can turn batteries off. So battery 1 off and battery 2 off. And there we have it. That is a full flight with the Flight Factor A320. Again, this works for every Airbus in the A320 family. And yeah, there you have it. I hope that this video is helpful, and I hope that well, I hope to see you in our sessions and practice everything that we saw today in this video. And yeah, I'll see you around. Thank you very much. Bye bye.